Welcome back to the Charismatic Voice. I have been wanting to analyze Collective Soul for a long time, partly because you all keep recommending them, and partly because my friends and family also keep recommending them. And when I heard that they have a song called December, I knew that this was the moment to finally dive in. So let's get to it.
Why drink the water from my hand? Contagious as you think I am. Just took my son towards your domain. You can't run it over again.
The first thing that struck me was the riff does sound a little bit familiar. I think I've heard this on the radio somewhere. So this isn't truly a first listen, but really truly a first to dive in. It just sounds familiar at this point. Second thing that I think is fascinating here, this is super fascinating, is how he's layering his voice. This is Ed Roland, which, by the way, this band was formed by brothers, which I think is super, super awesome. Ed Roland is our lead singer here, and it sounds like a lot of times when you first hear a singer enter, you'll hear them in a single channel, just very straight centered. I'm talking about the vocal production, really. Sometimes you'll hear it doubled to make it feel a little bit wider, but it's still the same person. You don't usually hear a ton of layers for a quiet, I'm guessing this was a verse. You don't usually hear that for a verse intro. I think I might hear a cocktail being made, y'all. Or maybe a mocktail, all things considered. Something's in the works. Anyhow, I think that there are some amazing layerings going on here that are unusual, especially because that top one is really, really high in its voice, but so carefully peppered in. It's it grabbed me immediately with really great vocal production. Let's go back to the beginning. This is very heavily in my left ear right now. If you guys have headphones or monitors, check that out. Started very heavily leaning here, and then right there it balanced out.
Why drink the water from my hand?
So immediately, I think he has at least a double of the lower voice, and then up higher, like an octave higher. Wait, is just one octave or is it two?
Why drink the water from my
Just one.
hand?
So one octave higher in his falsetto, he's doubling as well. So really, we have at least 3 layers that are going on there just in the very first introduction of his sound.
I drink the water from my hand, contagious as you think I am. Just took my son towards your domain. You can't run it over again. Don't scream aloud, don't think aloud. Turn your head now, baby, just spit me out. Don't worry about, don't speak about. Turn your head now, baby, just spit me out.
Whoa. We got some definite grunge influence now in the sound. Meow. There's almost an R coloration that I hear in his enunciation there that really flagged it to me as this feels like we got a little bit of grunge in here. Side note, I thought that Collective Soul was going to have soul in the music. I think they're from Georgia. I was saying we'd be having, I don't know, some sort of Deep South soul music, a little gospel in there. What? Whoops. Okay. I love it when I get surprised like that. That's just, instead, we've got a slight grunge to it. Oh man. Okay, there's also some really cool production that happened in a couple spots. I'm gonna go back and then pause on a couple of those moments.
Don't think aloud. Turn your head now, baby, just spit me out.
Yeah, baby. There's the way that he's enunciating baby there is very much grungy, where we get tends to be more closed and sometimes a little more dirtiness in the sound. I don't think grunge is bad by any means, y'all. In case you haven't seen other analyses of me loving grunge before, please know that I am really, really, really into it. And I think that there's so much incredible rule breaking that goes around the sound that's part of what made it so extraordinary. And I love then also starting to see trickles of how from that like grunge movement that really only lasted maybe 5 years in Seattle, was such a short period of time. It was crazy, mostly centered in Seattle, but also we had these sort of offshoot bands in other places that had such a huge impact in rock music. I don't remember when this was recorded. It was in my, it's in my notes here. They're formed, so Collective Soul is formed in 1994. And I think this is on a 1995 album, I believe. So this is yes, it's released as part of their 1995 album Collective Soul. So this is right at that end of the first like grunge era focused in Seattle, if we want to really hone in there. And that means that they were heavily, heavily influenced by that sound, which is so easy to hear in the vocal technique. Right there. That's when I get Pearl Jam.
Don't worry about, don't speak about. Turn your head now, baby, just spit me out.
Yow. Even the way he's going meout. I mean, let's be real. This sounds a little bit like a cat. You're welcome, Sandra. I know you would appreciate that. But it's like, it's not just a friendly meow, like meow, but it's meow. And that makes an amazing effect on this idea of me out and something being spit out. I think he purposefully really played with that word and that enunciation to give it an extra sense of imagery.
Meow.
Are those some bongos? Oh, check this out. At the beginning of the song, I mentioned it was super heavy left leaning. I think that was the same riff that we heard at the beginning, but this time it got balanced by our extra lovely, more raw sounding percussion that's hanging out in the right side. Right here.
Why follow me to higher ground? Lost as you swear I am.
Now, I'm pretty sure this is all him layering. I don't have a note that, there are some backing vocals that will be done by his brother or Will Turpin, who I guess does bass as well. It sounds to me like it's him, but if it is his brother, I wouldn't be too surprised. It sounds like it's all his layering of the voice, though. And I hear that in a similarity of the amount of air coming through the sound. There's always a bit of a kind of extra air that's spacing around the sound. He has almost like just a tiny bit of soft gravel, right? Just a tiny, tiny bit in there. Makes for a really good hard rock voice. But even when he goes up into his falsetto, there's a similar feeling of texture in the sound. And then, even harder to match is a similar rate of vibrato that happens. Super, super cool. I'm going to come back to here. I'll point it out exactly.
Follow me to
Right there.
higher ground.
So on me, vibrato, this kind of vibrato, I should say. There's different types of vibrato, but this kind of vibrato is created actually by a release of muscles. I find this so fascinating because we end up getting almost this like it's an alternating pull, alternating release of muscles, and you actually can see vertical bobbing in the larynx sometimes. So all of those cartoon depictions of opera singers with a whoa, that is actually somewhat correct. Vertical bobbing does happen. It does happen. And that affects the sound waves that we're hearing there, of course. So it's often a periodic release of muscles. And it happens when singers actually back off a little bit and relax a little bit. We've also seen that often when you back off and just relax into sort of a better balanced tone there with the vibrato, we do tend to get more overtones as well. So that can improve the overall tone of the sound. One of the reasons why you might want to bring vibrato into your sound. Up to you. You can sing with it or not. It really is a stylistic choice. There are other kinds of vibratos where you sound like a bleating goat, and that includes rather introduction of tension rather than releasing of it. When you have this releasing of tension, especially, that rate can be very difficult to control. That's a natural vibrato. And everyone has a different natural vibrato. Freddie Mercury, for example, had a very, very fast natural vibrato. And matching the rate of one person's vibrato to another requires a level of control that even most professional singers will not achieve.
Follow me to higher ground.
I'm going to play that one more time on me. Just notice how that vibrato really lines up.
Follow me to higher ground. Lost as you swear I am.
So could this be somebody else that's matching vibrato? It could. I think it's him. I think it's all his voice being layered here. But one other thing to mention here is in families, there does tend to be similarity of tones. Sometimes it can be wildly different, but sometimes you'll end up finding family members that just have this sort of uncanny ability to sing like each other. This comes from experience of growing up in a family of singers. There are so many things that I think are learned and genetic in voice. Your bone structure determines a lot about your sound, about your resonance. If you are growing up in the same family, you're going to be more likely to be able to match a tone. So if it were somebody else, I would guess his brother.
Follow me to higher ground. Lost as you swear I am.
I like that little scoop in there. It feels really earthy overall.
Don't throw away your basic needs. Ambience and vanity.
Both times we've had the drums enter, it's felt a bit shocking. I think it is almost just soothing, right? This is a rock band, but it feels so soothing. I don't think this qualifies as soft rock. I think they're technically hard rock, even though I was feeling like we should have had more soulful elements in that hard rock. But it's so like cushy, right? Smooth. Right? It's that sort of, it's like rough satin, if such a thing exists, that the moment the drums come in, I'm not talking about what I think is the bongos there, or maybe congas. I'm talking about the full kit. Every time it's entered afterwards, it just feels so shocking. It's like, whoa, that's a lot more sound than I really expected to come in. Huh. I'm gonna look at how this lines up with the lyrics.
Don't scream about, don't think aloud. Turn your head now, baby, just spit me out. Don't worry about, don't speak about. Turn your head now, baby, just spit me out. Don't scream about, don't think aloud. Turn your head now, baby, just spit me out. Don't worry about, don't speak about. Turn your head now, baby, just spit me out.
I want to point out a lot more in this course than I did the first time. I was just getting to know their sound the first time, and now I'm starting to hone in on some of the layers. The more I hear this, the more I feel really, really impressed with the vocal production. We caught that immediately with the entrance where we had at least 3 layers of his voice. But I'm hearing all of these different bits of addition in the layers, or just addition like haunting oohs up top, with the spit me out. That amazing cat-like moment. That is adding a bunch of vocal sound to emphasize those lyrics. The oohs are, they're up there, they're haunting, they're hanging out on the right side, kind of feels like upper right, so the spatialization is really interesting. I do think that there's some great compression that's happening, because he never sounds to me like he's really just pounding on the voice. There's something always a little bit comforting in his sound. So I don't feel like he's singing at 100%. And when you compress a voice, you help take the highest highs and the lowest lows. You basically try and make them a little bit more equal in volume. And it feels like I've got just a really strong central sound that is present all the time, which is super important, especially with loud instruments. It feels like it's present all the time. The layers are assisting in that as well. And it's still personal. When it's a chorus that feels loud and has a louder drum kit going as well, you need to make sure that that sound is present. Compression really helps, but you need to make sure it's there and it's popping out in front of the instrument so we can get all of those lyrics. And I think that in this case, they have produced his voice extremely, extremely well to make sure that it feels personal, doesn't feel like he's shouting at us, but being personal, it hasn't gotten lost within this louder volume in general of the instruments. I think it's back here. Let's go back to the beginning of the chorus.
Don't scream about, don't think aloud.
And so when he's doing this, don't scream about, don't think about, think aloud. Man, these lyrics are they feel very introspective, while also having some punch and bite to them. I'm still trying to figure them out. When I read through them the first time, I thought, okay, this feels like a relationship that probably had a great moment at one point in December and now is ended, and there are these bittersweet memories coming back. And don't think aloud is maybe saying, don't you dare think about that relationship out loud. We're trying to forget about things that happened in December once upon a time. It's feels fresh. Too fresh to say out loud. Oh, I was going to talk about vocal technique. I got distracted. Sorry.
Don't scream about, don't think aloud.
We'll talk about it in a moment.
Now, baby, just spit me out. Don't worry about, don't speak about. Turn your head now, baby.
So what's happening is he's essentially pulling forward and forward in the resonance as he's going down in pitch on don't scream about and don't think aloud. As he's going down there, he keeps the sound more forward and a little bit lighter, brings it almost like to have a little bit of bite in the sound, but really think forward with the bite. Keeps it in a lighter mechanism in his voice as well. So if you're thinking about registration here, I'd really think about how he's mixing his sounds. And I wouldn't really try to say register 1, 2, chest, head, voice. Let's just talk about bringing it down and bringing some of the lightness from an upper part of the voice into it. And then when he says, turn your head, it's like he keeps the R coloration of turn present in the rest of the phrase. I hear a little more opening of some back resonance and engaging of just a lower, it is lower registration. I would say he's mixing in more TA, thyroretinoid, into the sound, which makes it a heavier sound. So coming down from the top, keeps it forward, snarly, bright. Also had some really nice airiness that he kept in the sound. And then on turn, he gets really earthy with the sound, gives a little more back space, probably a little more pharyngeal poof. And with that, goes into that R coloration as well. It's a very, very sharp and distinct alteration in the tone quality.
It's like, na 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 na.
Baby, just spin me out. Don't worry about, don't speak about. Turn your head now, baby, just spin me out. Don't scream about.
I love those oohs when they come in.
Turn your head now, baby, just spin me out. Don't worry about, don't speak about. Turn your head now, baby, just spin me out.
One of the other things that I was really delighting about in listening to the chorus through this second time was hearing more string instruments in it. It has just more orchestral elements, almost like Smashing Pumpkins, the little bit I've heard of them. It brings more orchestral elements. Is this what, symphonic rock? Is that what we start to call it? I dig it. Anytime we're bringing more symphonic instruments into contemporary music, I really, really dig it because I think it just complements the sound.
Don't speak it loud. Turn your head now, baby, just spit me out.
Right here. Shift. Huh. This whole song is very texturally motivated, very texturally planned out. In this instrumental solo I guess is really instrumental layers that were being added on. And when one instrument enters, it's going to have a different sort of texture to it. It's like when you have a really good meal. I know you guys love our food comparisons. But think about an incredible cake or parfait, or really just think about incredible chicken salad, right? I like it when any of these items has different types of textures that are both the flavors of the food that you say like, okay, we need to have a balance in the flavors. But when you have something that is smooth versus something that is chunky, like it's important in a parfait that you might mix something like cake where you've got some sponge or you've got some sort of pudding, right? That's going to have that really smooth feeling to it. You might have some sort of nuts. You might have some sort of fruit in there. All of these different textures that you're bringing together. When you're doing a yogurt parfait, you've got some granola in there, really mixing up those textures. And then you have some sort of sprinkles on top to give it another texture. This entire instrumental section was essentially the building of a musical parfait. Let's go back just a little. There we go. That's like layer one here. I really like that dynamic flare in the middle. When the percussion enters, it's an entirely different texture. There your strings are, and a few different types of strings as well, a few different types of percussion. Just note here that the way his voice is produced and placed, the voice is being added as another layer and not a central one. It's hanging out pretty far to the right. So it's a little bit back in the mix so that it's not your central flavor, right? It isn't the spoon that feeds you. It's just another layer of the parfait. So when our lead vocal got in there on the don't, whatever it was, then we did get a much more central element. The spatialization here, meaning where things are centered, if it's left, right, centered, sometimes we can even make things feel like they're higher or lower. That is so important for our ears because we need to be able to distinguish between what we're hearing. And sometimes having things sort of placed in this imaginary soundscape is what allows us to pick out each of these instruments and sound. And it makes us overall have a more clear listening experience. Let's go back just a little bit. I love the way they've come back to this riff a few different times. It feels really catchy. And it went full circle for the beginning and the end. This whole last section of the song feels to me like it could be a really incredible way to level up your hearing. There are so many layers and little shifts that are made like every 8 bars, sometimes every 4. And if you can pick out what that shift is each time, sometimes there's multiple things that are done. If you can pick that out each time, then that's really, really good for your ears. I'm going to put up a playlist of some grunge music, particularly Pearl Jam, because I hear a lot of similarities with Pearl Jam here. And I want you to go listen to some analysis of that and see if you can pick out the similarities, especially in the vocal technique. So this is up over here, and may you fall more in love with music every day.